In trading, knowledge is power, and lack of knowledge in what you're doing can be costly, very costly. So you need a solid foundation of quality market education. Whether you're new to trading or a seasoned veteran looking to add advanced strategies to your arsenal, there's always something to learn and something to improve on. And now you can access the same knowledge that professional traders receive with Market Rebellion's Trading Education. I'm Bill Johnson, Head of Options Education here at Market Rebellion, and we've assembled a comprehensive curriculum based on decades of real trading experience, covering everything you need to know about trading options from beginner to advanced. We go way beyond the nuts and bolts of options theory to teach you how to apply specific trading strategies and the techniques needed to adapt your trades when markets shift. Regardless of your goals, you'll gain access to the education you need with easy-to-consume lessons so you can learn to trade with confidence, enhance your knowledge, and master the practical skills required for market success. So please join us for in-depth trading education only from Market Rebellion. Good afternoon once again to all of our options traders and market rebels out there from a very chilly Florida, although I hate to say that, Stu, because we've been getting reports in Q&A. Texas got snow. Louisiana got snow. I know you guys up in Philly got snow. What are your temps up there now?
Yeah, we're like 8 degrees, man.
All right, I'm not gonna tell you what we are here. Even though we're really cold, we're not anywhere close to 8.
It's cold.
It looks cold. I know you sent me some pictures of the snow up there. Crazy.
It
But
is.
anyway, we hope that everybody's surviving the cold. And so we've got a great Coach's Corner for you today that is going to be super helpful for assisting with making better decisions. And that's really what options trading is about. As we always tell traders, there is no good, better, or best. If one strategy completely outperformed another, it would be an arbitrage. So we always have to say, well, based on what I'm trying to do, based on my outlook, based on my risk tolerances, how much I'm willing to invest, there's a lot of things we have to consider, which is best for me. And so what we wanted to do is to bring up a topic that Stu and I, we kind of find that it's odd that a lot of people seem to miss this.
It's a little nuanced, but it's really important. It's
super important, especially for like UOA or unusual options activity people. Could be a really good choice. So
we get a lot of like, what's the best question?
Yeah.
Which one?
Strike that from your vocabulary, right?
And this is going to kind of delve into like how to, one way among hundreds to
one way to help you make a choice.
Help you make a choice.
So let's start with our Chalk Talk question. This is our little thought-provoking question that we do at the beginning. We'll come back and answer it. But the main benefits for using a vertical spread are to, 1, reduce the cost, and 2, to limit losses. Now, I know it's a little bit of a vague question, but I think if you were to ask most people the benefits or the reasons for using a vertical spread, these would be the 2 answers you would get. They say, oh yeah, it's to reduce your cost, but it also limits your losses.
Well, that's what it says on all the YouTube videos.
And that's what it says on all the YouTube. It says in all the books. It's to reduce your costs, but it comes at the expense of limiting losses.
The whole
And so what we
walk.
want to do is we
We're
want
gonna
to
do the talk thing and talk about in the rainforest about how this works. Is that what we're gonna do?
exactly. So we just want to show you how it's a different spin on this and what you really need to consider before you completely bash a vertical spread. So our topic for today, the overlooked vertical spread advantage. And again, it's very easy to overlook the things that you don't see, and we're going to show you why you don't see them on your broker's platform. So let's get started with a quick look at a vertical spread. When we look at our vertical spread, this is going to be buying and selling an option with the same expiration, but we have different strikes. So here we're buying the long 100. Okay, we get the bend at 100. We're selling the 105. This is a very typical risk profile for a vertical spread. Now, what will make it different is that you can shift it up or down depending on the price, but it will still have that same basic shape. And so people look at this and I go, okay, I got it. We got limited losses down here, but unfortunately, we've limited the gains up here. And that's easy to look at that and make that conclusion, especially when we overlay it with long shares of stock. So now we're looking at the same vertical spread, but now we're going to compare it to just a long $100 call. So we get our bend at 100, but now it becomes very obvious that we are giving this up. We've got this flattened part out here above 105. We're just not going to participate. The benefit is we can see this too. We've shifted the maximum loss to a lower level. So again, this is where people say, I got it. We're making it cheaper. The blue line sits higher than the black, but it comes at the expense of capping up your gains. So when most people look at this, unless they're trying to make it cheaper, maybe because of high volatility or they just don't have the funds, they're always looking at this part going, you know, I just don't know if I want to give this up. We always think the trades that we're about to step in are going to be the biggest, most explosive trades. We don't want to give that up. And this becomes the thing that people are missing. So let's take a look at why people miss this. Let's look at a risk graph here. Remember, these are shares of stock on the horizontal. These are the resulting profits or losses. And this is for one share of stock. We get our typical 45-degree line. It's a 45-degree line, meaning that for every dollar we move to the right, we move $1 up. So we can see if the stock goes from 100 to 105, trace a line up to the blue, we've picked up 5. Stock goes up 10 points, we've picked up 10. Stock falls 10, we've lost 10. It's just dollar for dollar. This is what your brokerage platform will show you. All right, so again, all you would do to read this, you're just going to trace a line up to the graph and read it off to the left. But now what happens is that if, let's say they do 2 shares, the line on your broker's platform is going to stay the same. And that's why people miss this advantage. Because what your broker's platform is going to do is it's just going to change the scale. Instead of saying, all right, at a stock price of 110, you're going to make 10, they'll just say, you're going to make 20. Notice how the angle of the blue line did not change. What if you buy 100 shares? Broker's platform is going to leave that line exactly the same. They're just going to change the scale over in here and say, okay, if it goes up 10, you're going to make 1,000 points, $1,000. So that's what gives people when they start making these comparisons, that they miss this, because this is not really what's happening. You are changing the angle or the slope or your deltas of this line. And so that's why it's super easy to overlook this benefit. So let's dive in a little deeper with this, Stu. And before we do, please remember marketrebellion.com/get started. Lots of great information here, articles, videos, topics just like this to help you understand options better. So let's look at everything on the same scale. I'm going to make it a very big scale here from plus 250 down to minus 250. Here's our one share of stock. Now notice if I don't change the numbers to the left, like I did before, and leave the line the same, what happens now? Now our line changes. See, if we go to 2 shares of stock, it does this. If we go to 3 shares, 4, 5, 6, see, we keep going like this. And this is where people are saying they don't see this because your broker is simply changing this over here on the left. There are two different ways of coming up to exactly the same mathematical argument, but this is really what's happening. You are changing this slope.
Just think of it as like more shares, right? So stock goes up,
exactly.
more money, and this is this is kind of a problem too. Like little kind of a segue just for a moment. The loss side is what people really don't want to look at. You know, I don't want to think about that. I'm just going to win, right? But I mean, if you're going to win more on the upside, you got to lose more on the downside.
Yes,
and that's what I was talking about here, right? It's just more shares. You know, one of the questions I get, one of the things we do in classes. So if you have 100 shares at 100 and it goes to 105, how much money did you make? Well, I made $500, right? Everybody can get that. But when I go the other way and say, well, you know, you got 100 shares at 100 and it goes to 95, how much money did you lose? It's like, I don't know, right? I mean, there's like this mental block about the other side. All Bill's doing here is just increasing the number of shares.
And in options language, we're increasing the deltas.
Delta.
Right, because we're still always controlling 100 shares for one contract, but the way that they respond will be different. So that's why we talk about deltas. So now let's go back to our vertical spread. Again, this is the way that your broker's platform is going to show it. So if you have one vertical spread, your broker's platform looks like this. If you have 2 vertical spreads, looks like it hasn't changed. If you have 5 vertical spreads, looks like it hasn't changed. Why? Because these numbers over here are changing and you're probably just not paying attention to it.
Yeah.
What you have to realize is that when you are buying more vertical spreads, or more call options for that matter, you're changing the angled part of this line. These are your deltas. This graph is at expiration, so that's 100 deltas between the strikes. And if you're buying more and more spreads, you are changing this slope in here. But you're not going to see it on your broker's platform because they're simply changing the numbers on the vertical scale. And that turns out to be really important, and we'll find out why in just a second. Before we do, marketrebellion.com/get started. Please check us out there. Absolutely free. I don't even think you have to sign in, do you, Stu? Like with emails or anything? I think it's completely just open. It's just a great archive, lots of good articles and videos, and no fee, lots of great stuff. So especially if you're new to options, check it out. Great resources for getting started. So now with that backdrop, what's the overlooked benefit of a vertical spread? All right, so let's start again. Remember that vertical spreads reduce the cost and reduce the risk.
And here's a hint to that answer.
Okay.
Bill's already talked about it. It's already out there. We just got done talking about the numbers, the changes, the deltas, right? So here it is.
Oh, I thought you were going to, you're prepping us. I thought you were going to give us the.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. There we go. So we reduce the cost and reduce the risk. The reduced cost allows you to buy more contracts or more spreads. And people go, okay, I get that, but I still have limited gains. Yes, but what you're not seeing is that you are increasing the deltas between the strikes.
Between the strikes.
You are increasing your leverage that you are not going to get for the same money.
Right. Think if you had one contract and it's just, you know, fast forward and take away all the extrinsic value, you got 100 deltas, right? From point A to point B. But if you have 5 spreads or 5 contracts between A and B, you got 500.
500 deltas. And yet your broker's platform is going to look like 100 because it's changing the scale on the left.
It's going to look exactly the same.
It's going to look exactly the same. And that's why people miss this.
Yeah, you get to make more money in between the strikes and you give up. Well, I'm probably getting ahead of this, but
yeah, you're giving up the low probability stuff. So for example, we're going to run through some 3 different scenarios with different volatilities to show you what changing volatilities does. And we're going to start by buying the at the money. So let's say that the stock is 100 and days to expiration 30. The at the money $100 call is 229. So these prices are all from a pricing model. Now the out of the money 105 call is priced at 64 cents. And that means our 100-105 vertical is $1.65. That's just 229 minus 64 cents.
I reduced my cost.
Yep. So now let's take a fixed cost, and it doesn't matter what numbers you pick, you're still going to get the same outcome. You get the same ratios. Let's say you're willing to put $2,000 into the trade. Now notice if we buy the 100 call or if we buy the 100-105 vertical, our limit is still 100 in both cases. So it doesn't matter what probability the stock is to hit 100, it's exactly the same risk for both of them. Yeah. So we're keeping that constant as well.
Because let's just hit that for 1 second. Because the stock is 100, and we're talking about the 100 call. We're not on either side of the equator here. We're like right on it. So there's no probability of either side. It's truly a flip of the coin to either side.
Right. But even if the stock were 101, you would still have some probability for the stock to fall at 100 and make it worthless. But it would be exactly the same for the 100-105 vertical, because it's still 100. They are both sharing that long strike. So now let's say you're willing to put $2,000 into a trade. How many calls could we buy here, Stu, at 229? Well, we just divide them out. Actually, by 229, because each contract controls.
That would be 8.7. Oh, there you go.
You could do 8.7 calls.
Let's call it 9.
If we take the vertical spread, dividing by 165, we could buy 12.1 spreads. Now, a little footnote here. I know some people are going to object and say, hey, wait a second. You can't buy fractional contracts. So this is a bad comparison. Not really, because we could just make it 10 times bigger and compare 87 calls to 121 spreads. The point is that if you're going to make fair comparisons about the leverage, we have to pretend that you can buy fractional contracts. All right, so these are
as usual, it's close enough. It's okay. It's just,
yeah. Now in the real world, you might round this up to 9. You'd probably round this down to 12 for the decisions. But for this presentation, to really make fair comparisons, we have to look at the true leverage. So now let's overlay these on the same scale. So if we do that, now look what you get. See, now we can see a difference in that vertical spread. And our break even down here for the spread in red is 101.65. That's the 100 strike plus the $1.65 we paid for the spread. The break even for the call is 102.29. That's the 100 call plus the 229. Now notice that's not very far up, but it's 1% higher than 101.65. So we need the stock to move up another 1%. And most of the time, these are going to be fairly short-term trades. It's not insignificant. And that's just to get your money back. But now here's the real benefit. Let's take a look up here. If the stock gets to 105, which is our maximum benefit for the 100-105 spread, the total amount of dollars that we make for profit is $4,053. But and we have to convert it to dollars because we don't have equal numbers of contracts. But look at where the black and red lines meet right here. That number, which is where the call option would produce $4,053, is at a stock price of 106.95, almost 107, about 2% up. So we're going, okay, yes, it is true that you give up the upside, but that's not going to come into play until another 2% higher. And if we know most of our traders, especially short-term traders, they're not holding out for this anyway. They're probably going to be long gone with the stock at 103 or 104. And the red line sits higher than the black line at all of those prices, all the way up to 105 and then all the way up to 106.95. Beats the black line. So this is part of your decision. It's not just, oh, I'm giving up all of the upside gains. That's horrible. Let me not do the spread. Do these calculations and say, I need the stock to go to 107, basically, before the long calls start to outshine the spread. Remember, it's always a race against time. And this is what we have to do.
This kind of shines, this kind of analysis, I think, when you're talking about like big spec trades, like UOA kind of trades.
Oh, exactly.
When you're thinking about stocks and, are high volatility, wwhy would you spread them off? Because you're looking really to hedge off the vol, right? So if you're looking to hedge off the vol by spreading off, and you got to give up that upside, but you're getting a big benefit because you're selling off a lot of the vol, right? That's huge. But in the meantime, you are giving up that tail on the right side. However, you are getting potentially more deltas if you do more contracts, right? In between the strikes. Again, it's in between,
Correct.
and that's a big benefit as well, right? So
It,
it's not
it's
just
it's it's very true. We talk about that all the time in UOA because a lot of times people will turn to spreads because they might be pumped up to 80 vol or 100 and something vol, something crazy. And you almost have to use a spread, and they usually seem reluctant to do it. But the other thing is if you're looking for, let's say, a buyout, which is kind of what we're on the hunt for with the unusual options activity, and you've got $100 stock, realistically, how high do you think it's going to go on a buyout? 10% premium on it? 15, 20?
yeah,
It could,
20
but
is a
it's
lot.
not going to be unlimited. This is more for a long-term view. This is going to be more of a binary. Closes at 100, opens at 110 the next day. And if you do that and you say, okay, but I could buy a boatload more spreads and I can get a whole lot more deltas for the same money, it can change your decision. Not to mention spreading off that volatility. But these are
Yeah.
some of the calculations that you need to do. I do these all the time in trying to decide between spreads versus long, just outright long.
A real good example is Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and that stock was up, I don't know, like 100 or something.
Yeah, last night we saw it in one of the Q&As. It was up, what, 100 and
Pre-market, yeah. So it's like, going into that, you have a $70 straddle. It's like, do you want to just buy the call, or do you want to buy this? Do you want to hedge off the volatility in some of the dollars with the spread? There's
because you
no
can say,
best
how
answer,
many
right?
more spreads can I get? That's
How
the
many more
question.
deltas can I get, and where's my
Yep.
break point's going to be, and what is really realistic, and do I want to use that one standard deviation move that the market is indicating, and maybe I want to push it to 1.5 just in case. This is the kind of analysis that you really need to do to help you come up with a better, a better understanding of what you're looking at after the fact, what you could be looking at after the fact, instead of letting the market dictate to you, well, let me see where everything opens and then I'll figure out what I want to do. You can do this ahead of time on various different outcomes,
Right.
and actually come up with the numbers, and you might actually come up with a decision that actually fits your goals and what you're trying to do. And is it enough? And am I willing to give up the tail for the extra in between the strike? Yeah, right. You can do all that. It's all there. You just have to be able to see it.
Yeah, this is the part that we're really trying to emphasize for this video, is it's the between the strikes that you're increasing the angle of this line, and you're not going to see that on your broker's platform because they're just going to change
that scale.
They're just going to change the scale over here,
Yeah.
which mathematically is the same thing, but it just doesn't look like it, and that's why people miss it. All right, let's do the same analysis here, but let's bump it up by double. Let's go to 40% vol. Stock's at 100. 30 days to expiration. Pricing model says the at the money is now 457. Should be 2 times, right? At the money will double with volatility if volatility doubles. Out of the money now is starting to pick up some juice.
What'd you go? You went from 20 vol to 40
20 to 40.
Okay.
So now the 105 is 260. Now look what that does to our 100 105 vertical. That's a $1.97.
Yeah.
See, these ratios are going to really start getting tweaked with the higher vol. So now let's take the same 2,000 trade. You could buy, we divide it by 457 bucks, and we get 4.4 calls, or we could get 10.2 spreads.
And think about the deltas in between.
Think about the deltas in there, people.
Yeah.
That's big. What does it look like? Wow. See, now we're starting to see some big advantages here. The break even down here is 101.97. That's the $1.97 that we paid for the spread, added on to the long strike. By the way, regardless of the number of spreads, the break evens will stay the same. The long call is going to break even at 104.57. Now that's 2.6% above the break even for the spread. Well, if you're in this for a short term, that's no joke, especially if vol starts collapsing on you. That's a pretty good clip, let's say, for 30 days. It's a huge clip.
I'm thinking Bill's going to show us, like even maybe double the 40 or 60 or something like that. So, before he does that, think to yourself, like, what is this
picture going to look like
as we increase implied volatility? And, it's surprising how much of a difference it actually makes. But kind of think, from the education standpoint, think about what is this going to do to that, yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the max gain will occur at the short strike at 105. That's going to be $3,090. So now the question is, where does the stock have to be for the black line to produce that same number? Where does it cross the red line? In other words, if I took just the long calls, where would the stock have to be to get that same $3,090 profit? And the answer is just over 111, or now 6.3% higher.
And this is $100 stock. I mean, that's
exactly. Thank you. Over maybe 30 days.
$6. I mean, really? Yeah.
Seriously. You're going to take that bet, seeing people just go, oh, but I'm giving up the tail and the upside here, and I'm limiting the upside. That's exactly right. But what they're missing is you're also bolstering your deltas by potentially a lot. It depends on which strikes you're buying and volatilities, and that's what we're trying to show you here. So now we can see it gets even bigger under higher vol. Let's do it one more. You were right. I'm going to actually bump it up by a factor of 2 again. We're going to go to 80% vol. Stock is 130 days to expiration. Now look at that.
Oof.
At the money, 913 doubled again. Right? Remember, at the monies will double if you double volatility, or they get cut in half if you cut it in half. So now we got to pay twice as much as in the previous one. But look at the 105 is now getting jacked up big time. And that's really reducing the cost of this. And again, people miss it. They go, oh, but I'm giving up the upside. It's a spread. They're not realizing these ratios. Because now our vertical is going to cost 206. That's just 913 minus 707. We're going to take the same $2,000 trade, where you can buy 2.2 calls or 9.7 spreads. Now what do you suppose our graph looks like?
I think I'm going with the spreads.
Look at that. Now your break even's at 102.06 for the spread. Remember, the stock's at 100. Or 109.13. That's almost 7% higher for that call to break even.
And I'm the guy that says, don't give up the tail, just buy less contracts. But,
right.
You got to think about the other side as well. Every once in a while, you're going to get that Netflix type move.
You will.
But it is the anomaly. Right?
It is. That's right.
And you can't consistently bet for the probability of a non-event and think at the end of the day you're going to win. It's just
or split them up. If you want to throw on maybe a couple of call options there to pick up that tail just in case. But like Stu said, you got to play the odds. And now, granted, this is 80% vol. So what does that tell us about hitting 109?
Decent chance.
It is a decent chance. And that's something else you can go into a pricing model and figure out.
Yeah,
what we're trying to show is
it wouldn't be 80 vol if there wasn't a decent chance it could get there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And these are some of the things that you have to do before you make your decision and completely trash the vertical spread and say, it's just to make it cheaper, but it gives up the upside. It's far more than that. Now let's take a look at the max gain. Max gain for the vertical is at 105. $2,852 we can make. But where does the red line cross the black?
Way out there.
Way out there. 122.05. That's 16.2%.
So again, from the trading standpoint, like which one are you taking? I'm taking the spread.
I would take the spread. Yeah. And especially if you know that you're going to be out early.
And at 130, am I going to give something up? Yeah, but that's
yes, you will.
Probable event.
Right. But we always find it kind of comical how traders like to pick up nickels in front of bulldozers. They're going to bash the spread, and they'll buy this call options here for $2,000, and they're going to be out for a $50 profit. But if you're going to be out anywhere between 100 and 122, you will absolutely dominate big time with the spread.
Yeah.
So the question isn't, oh, I'm giving up the upside. The question is, do I really think it's going above 122? 16%.
And to make that bet up there for 125 or 130, it doesn't make you a bad trader. It just makes you a bit more of a gambler. That's all. That's it.
But you
Yeah.
have to be able to justify that and say, yes, I did take that into account.
Right.
I did
Right.
know
You
that that's the
have to
break
be
even.
able to have this conversation with yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're not taking all of the information in. I have a
Yeah.
feeling, Stu, a lot of people watching this are going, I never thought of that. I would absolutely take the spread here. And yet they probably never introduced that into their own analysis when deciding between spreads or calls.
Bill, little side question, and I don't know the answer to this. I use Thinkorswim, and I know you do as well, and you're trying to get back on it. But is there a function on Thinkorswim or even E-Trade where you can tell it to not change that scale on the y-axis? Do you know?
Um, Thinkorswim will let you do an overlay. You can do the individual trades on there, so that would be a way to show it.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, kind
I
of
don't
back.
think you can do it on E-Trade.
Right, right. But that would accomplish the same goal.
Yeah. But at least you would know where to look. Now, here's a
Yeah.
good visual. I know it's kind of hard to follow since we've been flipping through the slides, but there's 20, 40, and 80% vol. But look at the delta difference. I mean, this red line is starting to get pretty close to vertical.
Yeah.
That means a little tiny move up, and you're starting to bank some profits. Now, is it also a risk? Sure, the steeper the line, the more risk there is, because if it happens to make a big gap up and then starts to sell off, you're going to fall faster on the red. But normally, especially for UOA, unusual options activity, people are looking for a binary event. It jumps to a certain price and basically stabilizes there. I think spreads are often overlooked.
Think about the question that people ask, I alluded to this earlier, which one's better? So if you can put together this kind of analysis, and you can look at these numbers and see on this move, this is what it's going to look like on a 40%, and on this 80, the move from 100 to 110 or 120. Look how much easier it is to come up with, well, this is the one I want to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It just makes the task so much easier when
So
you have
much
the
easier.
information in front of you that you can work with to help you get to the answer.
Absolutely.
Instead
So
of
let's
just
now
like,
take a look at the ratios. This is really what's causing it. So I'm going to put 20, 40, 80% vol. These were the prices of the 100 call. Notice they are doubling. If they're off a little bit, it's because of rounding. Here's the price of the vertical spread, but they will not double because this is an out of the money option. So the number of calls we could buy again were 8.7, 4.4, and 2.2. And notice that as we move this way, they are roughly getting cut in half. Again, they would if we were not rounding. But that's going to be true. So you're going to definitely reduce the number of calls for any fixed budget that you're willing to put into it. But look at your spreads. Okay, so let's go out this way. How big is 12.1 compared to 8.7? Well, it's 1.4 times. You've got 40% more deltas.
About 1.5.
What about 10.2 to 4.4?
Looks like a little more than double.
A little more than double. Now
No,
9.7 to 2.2. Now it's it's almost 4.5 times the number of deltas for the same money. So these are some of the things that we find that traders always overlook and tend to bash the vertical spreads without realizing because they're cheaper, you're capturing more deltas between the strikes. And if you take that long call by itself, your break even, or where the two strategies would produce the same profit, is going to be way out there.
And again,
so now let's close with one final question.
Ask yourself, like, is it okay to give up that way out there tail?
That's right.
Is it okay to do that in return for what you're getting in between the strikes?
That's the decision.
Right. That's your question to yourself.
Right.
Yes.
What are you trying to get out of it? It's not just, I think it's going up. Right. So these are hopefully giving you some better things to think about. Let's answer another question here. Is it better to sell the at the money? That would be a good question. Now, like Stu said, kind of think about it first. So what do you think would be a drawback if we sell the at the money? It means we're buying the in the money, assuming we're going to use calls and be bullish.
Well, yeah.
You have to buy intrinsic value now, and that's going to change those ratios.
That's a good logical discussion that you should have
absolutely. Try to figure. I do this every time when I'm starting to explore stuff. I'll say, what am I expecting and why?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go. I'm just going to do one of them. We'll take 80% vol. Let's put the stock at 105. Base expiration 30.
you're going to buy the in-the-money $100 call trading at 1207. Now remember, $5 of that is intrinsic, 707 is what we would call the volatility value. But now you're going to sell the at-the-money 105 call. Look at that, baby, jacked up to 959. So that means your 100, 105 vertical, look at that price difference, 248. Big difference from 1207 if you're thinking about buying an in-the-money call. Let's take the same 2000 trade. You could buy 1.7 calls or 8.1 spreads. So for reference, the previous one at 80% vol, we could do 2.2 or 9.7. So not a huge difference, but we are seeing you're a little bit worse off by selling the at the money, and that's because of the intrinsic value that you're paying. Now, again, that doesn't make it a bad strategy. There's always trade-offs. But we're just trying to show that these are some of the things that you have to think about. So if we go back to these numbers here, we get a break even 102.48 on the spread, 112.07 on the long calls, about 9.4% higher. Max gain up here, $2,041 at a stock price of 105, and where the long calls match that gain,
122, 123.
123.77, almost 18% higher.
Unbelievable.
So you're going to find they are all about the same, whether you're buying the at the money, selling the at the money, where it's really going to break down if you're super deep in the money or super deep out of the money. But for the most part, if you're right here buying or selling the at the money, you're going to get very big differences in the leverage.
By the way, everyone, any competent trading platform can do this for you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, they definitely will. So now with that newfound knowledge, let's see if we can answer the question. The main benefits for using a vertical spread are to reduce the cost and limit losses. No argument these are potential benefits, but if your friend walks up and says this to you, what should you say now? But you're missing one, and that is
Delta.
The leverage or the deltas between the strikes.
You get, right?
And that's the thing that people overlook. Why do they overlook it? Because your brokerage platform usually just changes the scale to the left.
They hide it. Why do they do that? It's those market makers.
You know, it's a good question. I think it maybe it's just easier graphically.
Yeah.
It takes less resources to just change the numbers out there and leave I don't know. It's a good question. It's a computer programmer question. But yeah, you would think that they would allow you to do overlays on the same scale. I think that'd be much, much more helpful. So anyway, again, we hope that gives you some things to think about. That's what we always like to do here in Coach's Corner. And if you are serious about taking your trading to a higher level, no matter what it might be, check us out, marketrebellion.com. You can call one of the sales team in there and you can get hooked up with Stu or Scotty. You know, we got to get Scotty on here again. He hasn't been on in a while.
Yeah.
But some of our world-class coaches here at Market Rebellion and talk about topics just like this, but specific to your cases and help you become better traders. And so with that, again, we hope you picked up some good little tidbits, a couple of good little golden nuggets of information. That's what it's all about. And we will see you next Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern for Coach's Corner.
See ya.